Hello and welcome. Today I am going to unveil the technique on how to actually make the triangle design on the resin, soap, and lotion dispenser video that I posted several years ago. I have chosen 4 colors different from the ones in the prior pictures of the dispenser in that video. I'm going to use this steel blue, a sapphire blue, an amethyst, and a lilac. If you are doing this project and you're picking your colors, I highly recommend don't pick a dark purple and a dark blue. It's very hard to tell as you're going through the project which is which, and you can then overlap the colors in the wrong way, which I wound up doing. It still looks very nice, but wish I had done a different color so that it would have turned out exactly as the one that I had shown in the prior video looked. So to start, I am measuring out a small amount of resin. You don't need more than, say, 15 to 20 milliliters of resin. I had a little extra here. I only wound up pouring in about 15 to 20 milliliters. And to ensure that my colors, the micas, did not stay as powder, because sometimes if you just pour mica directly into the resin and you stir, it doesn't incorporate and you'll still see some powder flakes. To make sure that did not happen, I added some isopropyl alcohol to the mica prior to pouring that into the resin. It's personal choice. You do not have to do it this way. It's how I do it. I just don't like to have any of the pigment that you can actually see. It didn't mix, so that's why I opt to go this way. Once I mixed that and then incorporated it into the resin, I poured it into just one corner of the mold. And the key here too is, as you're doing this, you want to have one thing you're using to balance the mold so that they all are about the same height. If you don't use the same thing, you could actually wind up with your things being different heights. So it's really important to make sure you pick something. So in this case, I just grabbed the thing of mica that I had, and for the very first one, I had to use something to kind of balance and hold it in place. And I did spritz some isopropyl alcohol after the pour, just to alleviate bubbles as much as I could. And so as you can see here, it's only in that one little corner after it got cured. So now I am going to do the same thing. I'm going to mix my resin, and then I'm going to mix my mica with some isopropyl alcohol, incorporate that, mix it up, and then I will pour that into the opposite corner and put it right back on top of that thing of mica, which is actually the color I'm using for this other corner. But just to make sure again that I'm keeping the sides the same level as I'm letting it lean. Once you have done that, you'll want to then spritz it with some isopropyl alcohol again, and also just eyeball it, make sure that it looks like it's the same height, and then prop it back up again on that same height of whatever it is that you're using to prop it, and put it in place. Spritz it with a little bit of isopropyl alcohol, let it cure, and then you'll see here I've got the 2 contrasting colors in each corner. And now I'll start working on that third color, again using the exact same technique. So for the bottom 4, I am showing you how much resin I'm using and all of that, just so you have that for reference. By the time I get to the next level, I'm not going to show that. This video is long enough already. But I also did want to make sure that I showed the entirety of the process. That way, if anyone is trying to actually replicate this, you would have all of the information that you need to be able to do so, as opposed to me chopping out large portions. So now there's the 3 corners, and I'm going to work on the 4th corner with the final color. Again, same process, and using isopropyl alcohol. This also, another thing too, when you put that little bit of isopropyl alcohol, it does help with remediating bubbles as well. So just keep that in mind too if you are thinking of whether or not you would like to use it. And I'm just pushing down a little just because I don't want any bleed of the color on the side of the mold because it can cure there. So here we are now, we have the four corners. See how close in color the blue and the purple, the dark ones are? And that's what made it extremely difficult once I started pouring the next levels. So here I am showing the contrast V. So you have your four corners and then you'll have a V on each side that you now need to fill. And then you just want to pick, whatever color you choose in the four that you have to fill the first V and then alternate around. And just pour that to about the same length. Then you're going to set it again on that same whatever you're using to prop it that is the same height and spritz it with a little isopropyl alcohol. And now I'm actually starting on the lid. I had a little bit of the lilac left, and so I just poured that into the ring. I will, as I go along, pour a little bit into the lid as well so that will also have those four contrasting colors. I should have thought that out a little bit better when I was pouring the lid because my colors didn't line up, but it doesn't have to be perfect. But I would have preferred that it had lined up more accordingly to these bottom four colors, or at least the top four colors where it lands. It looks like it's the bottom now, but it ultimately becomes the top. So I am now doing the light blue, and I am just doing that over in the opposite side that I did the lilac into that V, and then again tilting it on the mica so that it allows it to be at the same level. And then here I am pouring the blue into the lid to make sure that color is there as well. And allowing that to cure, coming back, and here you can see, I'll show a close-up of now you have the four corners plus those two V's. And then next I'll work on doing the two darker color V's on the other sides. And you can always fast forward here if you feel like you've got the technique down, but I know it's a long video, but if anyone does want to do this, I wanted to ensure you have the necessary information in order to do so. You'll see here I did pour a little more than the 15 mils that I was doing. And I did that on purpose because I knew I was going to be putting some into the lid as well, and I wanted to make sure I had enough to actually do that. And, you can always have another mold nearby. These, are nice colors. And I had a little mold nearby because I always seem to wind up with a little extra. And then you can just pour into that mold, and oftentimes you'll wind up with a very interesting design in that mold just because of the color combination and the way that you're pouring it. So again, just pouring that color there into the lid, letting that cure, and now we just have one more color to go to actually have a full line around the bottom. And so I am now doing the dark blue and mixing that and then pouring that into that final V. And again, I did pour a little more resin this time just so that I could have coverage for the cup, or for the lid as well. And mixing that with the mica and isopropyl alcohol. And then I poured that into that final V, put it back again on the same thing that I've been propping it up. And I forgot to mention, after the first pour, I did decide to put down this heat mat because it helps to get it to cure a little faster. Otherwise, it's about 7 or 8 hours between pours. So this took I could have just done it in a couple of days if I had paid attention and went over and messed with it right away, but I didn't. So this took a couple weeks to finish because I would come mix the resin, pour, put it on the heat mat, and then eventually come back to it and do the next one. So it is a time-intensive project. It's not something you're going to pour in a day. I guess if you use some type of quick set resin, maybe, The problem with that though is if you try to go that route, this is a deeper mold, so even though you're doing small shallow corners, sometimes when you're using a quick set resin, it has a lot of shrinkage, or it can have holes, not bubbles but actual holes, because it heats up so much because it's curing quickly. So I personally would not recommend using that. Now here I've actually switched to a lid for another mold to prop that mold on. And I did that because I didn't want to do 3 layers. I decided I only wanted to do 2. And if I had continued to use the other thing I was propping on, I couldn't get it to lay flat enough to actually make it where I would only have to do 2. It's up to you if you want to do 1, 2, 3, however many layers and however many layers your mold will allow you to. And here I am just finishing off the lid as well. So that will now just be put to the side until everything is finished. And I just continued around the edges. And I did not line my colors up correctly. I was there trying to figure out, oh, is it blue on this side or is it purple? And I definitely got it wrong. But the process of what you do is still the same. And here's where I did also start to speed things up a bit to not show you each time how much resin and how I'm mixing it and so forth. But I did keep all of my cups for the mica to the side, so I was able to just reuse those, the ones where I'm mixing it with the isopropyl alcohol. And then I just continued until I had finished all around the sides. And I had, let's say, a 1/4 inch left at the top. And once I got to that point, I just mixed up about 75 mils of resin, and I put that into 4 different cups and added all of the colors. So I made sure I used all 4 of the colors. And once I did that, I then just poured them in random on top to fill it. And it'll be right after this that you'll start to see what I'm actually talking about, where I took all of the colors. And so here I just took the blue and the purple, and then the light blue and purple, and I just alternated. No, special way of doing that. Now, you'll notice at the end, my top is blue, and that's because once this actually finished curing, there was a little bit of a gap on one of the corners, and so I just went back over it with the steel blue because that matched the same color that I had on the lid. So it's finally done 2 weeks later for you all, 10 minutes later, and I'm demolding. And this is a little bit of a difficult mold, so take your time with it. But here you see the effect, and there is where I messed up with the blue, and there's where I messed up with the purple. They should have been on the opposite side, so that first V should have been a different color, but see how pretty it looks on the top? But then I put the lid and see where I meant that the colors didn't match up. Again, some minor details. You're welcome to make sure that you pay attention to that and learn from what I've done. And then you just want to put your dispenser on the top, and it should screw on fine. And then I'm just using some Styrofoam thin glue here just to adhere that permanently to the lid to the actual dish. And then, as you can see, I can lift it and the lid stays on. And just to make sure that there were no sharp edges on the bottom, I did just use an emery board to even that out. And finally, that is it. I am done. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and ring the bell to be alerted to future videos.